Hello Africa, and welcome to this program in which we talk to a number of very senior officials of the African Union and on the African continent as the continent celebrates the 50th anniversary of the formation of the African Union. Now this is also the 11th anniversary of the African Union, and we have with us today His Excellency Mr. Erastus Mwencha, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Excellency, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Winnie, for having me.
Thank you. As we have mentioned in our introduction, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the formation of the Organization of African Unity. And we are also celebrating the fact that the African Union is just now slightly over a decade old. And from what we understand, as we look forward to the next 50 years, Africa is now planning forward to Agenda 2063. For this, obviously, we need some capacity within the institution of the AU Commission, which is the Secretariat of the African Union. Perhaps can you start by giving us an idea of what is being done to build capacity within the African Union Commission to implement the Agenda 2063?
Thank you, Wayne, again. First of all, as you rightly mentioned, the African Union Commission is the epitome of the Organization of African Unity, and now the Union, African Union. And it is got a mandate and responsibility as the custodian of all the instruments and all the elements of the Union. Beyond that, it has the capacity and the mandate to convene and build consensus on priorities that Africa will undertake in terms of implementation. It has the responsibility to follow up on implementation, but also to facilitate implementation. And more importantly also, it is mandated to be the spokesperson, the legal personality of the Union. In terms of implementation, the institution, of course, as we stand today, has been growing over the years in building its capacity in all the areas that the African Union has agreed to undertake cooperation and integration. These are the areas, the major ones, in the area of peace and security, in the area of infrastructure development in the continent, cooperation in the area of agriculture, cooperation in the area of trade and development, integration as a program, cooperation in governance, supporting member states in terms of improving on the human rights, and also in terms of elections, which is a major element now, and the cooperation in the sectors of health, in the human resource development and gender. These are the key areas that the Union and also the institution itself. If you look at the institution, we need to build capacity in terms of having resources to implement programs, having the number well qualified and trained to build the numbers. And this is an area we have given a lot of emphasis, so that we not only have numbers but also the right numbers and train the necessary staff that can facilitate development in this area. And you see it reflected in our annual budget, in our annual activities. And some of the things we are doing, of course, we have, this is, as you say, the African Union is slightly over 10 years old. We are now in the third strategic plan. The first strategic plan clearly laid out the vision and the mission. And working from there, part of the greater responsibility is to build the capacity of the Union. This is an area where we have invested a lot in terms of institutional numbers, but also facilities. And you can see it for yourself that this is now a union that really has credibility, has capacity, and works and supports member states to interact not only among themselves, but globally.
Has been done and is being done in order to improve the lives of African people on the ground. Now, can you just give us an idea of some of the challenges that are being faced by the Commission as it seeks to implement the development agenda?
When implementing a continental agenda requires some key foundations. One of them is having the political will of all the parties that participate in the integration process. That political will, in essence, also means pulling or surrendering sovereignty that we can implement the common agenda, because the common agenda we are talking about is integration. Integration means really member states are agreeing to work on a common program where they surrender part of their sovereignty for that to happen. The second aspect is then to give mandate to the Commission, together, first of all, legal mandate, instruments, either finance or human resource, which means capacity to be able to implement that. And the third one is really for implementation of those programs by member states, because the Commission is not police, as a police person that could come and enforce implementation at the level of member states. Now, these are the key areas one would wish to see better performance at the level of member states and at the level of the Commission, and also being able to implement those programs on time. And of course, we term these to be opportunities. And in the years, this has been well recognized that we need to step up and improve on implementation. We need a Commission that is efficient, that can deliver on the mandate, and we also need resources. These are all being discussed, and you see it in the agenda, and you see it incrementally that is happening on the ground. And you can see improvement in terms of what we are doing in the continent, in the area of infrastructure, in the area of peace, where a lot is being done, but yet a lot remains to be done. This is what I see as challenges, but I also see them as opportunities.
As opportunities.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellency, we often hear that the regional economic communities are the building blocks of the African Union. Can you just give us a brief on what is the role of regional economic communities in this whole process?
Thank you again. That goes back to 1963, when, during the formation of the Organization of African Unity, it was recognized that the continent was not in a position to undertake, at the level of all the member states, integration in all its facets. And therefore, it was agreed that the OAU would concentrate on peace and security, assisting member states in the formation of the state, and also in the area of political understanding and talking with one voice at the international arena, and making sure that Africa was really given space to control integration, was then seeded, working through the Economic Commission for Africa to regional economic communities. And many of them then were formed, especially in the early 70s, starting with the ECOWAS, what we now have as SADC, COMESA, East African Community, IGAD, ECAS, which are recognized as regional economic communities that are building blocks of the African Union. And if you look at progress of what they are doing, they have done a lot that is now becoming the foundation for us to achieve some continental frameworks. For example, in the area of market integration, the three regional economic communities, COMESA, SADC, and East African Community, have now reached a level where they are talking of a grand free trade area. Once you achieve that, that is 26 countries out of 54. And we are now looking at the possibilities of working with Central Africa, with ECAS and ECOWAS, to also get integration in that area. You can see then, instead of asking 54 countries to integrate, we are now looking at using the regional economic communities, which are 8, as integration. That is truly indeed the foundation of integration. And we want to really ramp up this activity in the coming years. Just to give you an example, just a few days ago, we had a very fruitful meeting with the Chief Executive of Regional Economic Communities, together with the Chairperson of the African Union. And we do have a framework that ensures that we can get good practices that happens in some of the regional economic communities, so that we can move in tandem and we can move to consolidate the continental framework. And they are all implementing our agenda. Because if you look at the framework that we have developed, whether it is Program for Infrastructure Development, commonly known as PIDA, this is what regional economic communities are implementing. If you look at CADEP, they are all implementing, talking to one agenda. If what I've just referred to, say, CALMA, which we call Accelerated Program for Reduction of Mother and Child Mortality, this is what they're implementing. So, indeed, we see them as playing not just a subsidiary role, but complementary, and therefore we are really one in this quest for continental integration.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for that explanation. Now, if we can move on to the event of the moment, which is the 50th anniversary celebrations of the formation of the African Union. Our understanding is that it is being held not just in Addis Ababa, but throughout the continent. So perhaps we can start by you giving us a brief idea of what will be happening in Addis Ababa as the whole continent celebrates this really momentous occasion.
The celebration is a very important landmark, and for us, we are celebrating it having in mind 3 perspectives. First is really to celebrate the past in terms of the struggles and the successes that Africa has been able to record. And for this, we will be remembering the founders. We'll also be looking at the path through which we have developed and seeing where Africa is today, where Africa should have been. The second aspect, we'll take stock of where we are today and what has Africa got as opportunities. There's no question about the fact that Africa today is the center of the world in terms of the resource endowments, the population factor, dividend, the favorable investment environment, and so forth. But then leverage all this and the lessons learned from the past to plan the future. And for the future, we have decided that out of the celebrations, we want to cast where we want to be, say 50 years from now. And once we agree on that picture, we then quantify what we need to take us there in terms of human resource, transformation of the continent. Because at the moment, if you look at the growth that we're enjoying, it is really driven by commodities. But we are saying Africa, with the number of youths we have, with the low level of participation of, say, women in business, we want to leverage this to bring all this into fruition and then develop a trajectory that will take Africa. Now, your question is, what will be taking place in Addis Ababa? As I said, Addis Ababa 25th will be more or less like the beginning, but at the same time, the culmination of the celebration. Beginning in the sense that we'll be celebrating throughout the year, so we'll be launching, and there will be themes that will be discussed in the member states throughout the year for the coming year. But on the 25th, we're expecting, first of all, a series of events that will start from the 11th of May to end on the 27th. These events will bring together all segments of society, the youth, the business community, the women, leaders, and all over, that they can celebrate with us. But the culmination of it is we will then develop a proclamation that will energize us, because these celebrations are being undertaken under the framework of Pan-Africanism and Renaissance. If you think about Pan-Africanism, this is the spirit that enables us to rid the continent of colonialism. This is the spirit that enabled us to rid the continent of apartheid. And we are saying the next war we have is economic liberation of the continent. And we need that kind of same spirit of solidarity, of working together to win this war. And that's why we want to celebrate it in that manner.
Going beyond Addis Ababa, what else will be happening?
We are expecting member states in their individual capacity first to celebrate this and ensure that all segments of society celebrate it. It is a major landmark, 50 years. And if you think of colonialism, what it did to Africa,
yes.
And if you think of the opportunity that Africa has had, let's celebrate that. But also ask ourselves, is there something that Africa could have done better? And what is it that we can do? Now, beyond that, we also want celebrations that will leave a legacy. We hope that we can, for instance, take some issues at hand. Look at issues of how is Africa faring in terms of trade with the rest of the world? What is it that we can do? How is Africa faring in environment? What is it that we can do for us to develop a green economy? What is Africa doing in the area of food security that we can produce? So that this celebration is not just like a birthday celebration, but it's a soul-searching. It is energizing. It's envisioning that the continent can then emerge from these celebrations with a new spirit for us to move forward.
Fought against colonialism and apartheid, as you have mentioned. It obviously received support from a number of friends, perhaps some of them within the continent and some of them from outside the continent. Now, which dignitaries are we expecting to attend this event, both from Africa and from outside?
You are right, Wayne. As we celebrate, and as I said, when we celebrate as a continent, we will be celebrating founders of our continental framework. But in that, we also cannot forget those that assisted us. But there are also many other categories. First of all, let me say, we have received a lot of enthusiasm from the international community to join us in the celebrations. And we are so grateful for this good gesture and also understanding of the friendship and the cooperation that Africa enjoys with the rest of the world. And so we have invited guests from all the continents, and the categories, of course, reflect what you have just said, those who assisted us in the struggle for independence and defeating apartheid, those who are our strategic partners at the moment, those who are our friends of Africa, and those that we intend to work, and they're all segments, but also the diaspora, which is a very important component of Africa, because the diaspora, actually, if you go back to the history of Pan-Africanism, it is the diaspora. It is that meeting that took place in Manchester in the year 1900, that produced this movement, and we want all those to come and celebrate with us.
Thank you so much. Perhaps before we conclude, do you have one final word that you would like to say to the African people as we together celebrate this great occasion?
50 years of independence is a major landmark. It is a moment for us to reflect and, first of all, be grateful for what we have been able to achieve, but what is also prevailing in the continent. But it's also a moment for us to move forward. Africa is today seen as the cradle of humanity. Africa should also be the cradle of development. We're looking at a continent that is sitting on vast resources, the human factor, the resource endowment. But we're also a continent of paradox, because we are hosting as a continent the greatest number of underdeveloped countries. This is an opportunity for us to ask ourselves, what spirit of Pan-Africanism, what solidarity can we put in place for this continent to occupy its place, its rightful position in the global economy? We have a vision which says in 2030, Africa Africa should be prosperous, where we see a number of countries emerging to become middle income, if not newly industrialized countries, but also to eradicate poverty and bring peace and stability in the continent, which is our driving vision of the continent.
Excellency, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for taking time
to
brief our audiences on this very important occasion. There you have it, Africa. You've heard it from the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mr. Erastus Mwencha. He started off by telling us a little bit about what is being done to make sure that the Commission, which is the Secretariat of the African Union, has the capacity to move ahead with the agenda for development for the continent. And then we went into a little bit of information about what is actually being done to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the African Union. Join us again in next programs as we continue in our series of celebrating the Organization of African Unity and the African Union. Thank you.